The stage lights dimmed, and the familiar buzz of anticipation filled the AGT arena. Thousands of people leaned forward in their seats, waiting for the next act. From the side of the stage, a young Filipino boy appeared, his small hand tightly holding onto his mother's. The crowd immediately noticed the nervousness written on his face, the way his shoulders tensed, and how his eyes darted toward the sea of cameras and bright lights. But right next to him, his mother's calm presence anchored him. She gave his hand a gentle squeeze, silently assuring him, "We're in this together." As they stepped toward the judges' table, the theater fell into a hush. Simon Cowell raised an eyebrow, studying them closely. He had seen countless performers before, but there was something about this mother and son duo that felt different. They didn't walk onto the stage like people chasing fame, they walked as if this was their one chance to prove something far deeper. Heidi Klum offered them an encouraging smile, and Sofia Vergara clapped softly, urging them on. Howie Mandel leaned in with curiosity. But all eyes quickly shifted back to Simon, who sat with his chin resting on his hand, waiting for them to speak. The mother bent down slightly to her son's level and whispered something in Tagalog. No one in the audience could understand the words, but the tenderness in her voice said everything. It was a promise, a prayer, and a reminder that he wasn't alone. The boy nodded, took a deep breath, and gripped the microphone with trembling fingers. "Hello," the mother said softly, her accent thick but graceful. "We're from the Philippines, and this is my son." Her voice cracked for just a moment before she steadied herself. "We came all the way here because he has a dream, and I believe in him." The audience reacted with murmurs of warmth and support, clapping gently. The boy finally found his voice. "I want to sing, for my mom," he said shyly, his eyes flickering toward Simon. His innocence struck a chord, and a ripple of emotion spread through the judges' panel. Simon, who was usually reserved, leaned forward with a slight smile tugging at his lips. "All right then," he said, his tone softer than usual. "Show us what you can do." As the boy and his mother positioned themselves, the audience held its breath. This was no longer just an audition. It was the beginning of a story, a journey of words, music, and love, that would soon take everyone in the room by surprise. The music track began to play softly, echoing across the vast AGT arena. For a split second, the boy hesitated, staring at the microphone as if it were heavier than he could bear. His little hands shook, but his mother bent down, placed her hand gently on his shoulder, and gave him an encouraging nod. That single touch was enough. He took a breath, closed his eyes, and let the first note escape his lips. It was fragile at first, a trembling sound that carried both innocence and vulnerability. The crowd leaned in, unsure of what to expect. But then, almost like magic, the boy's voice found strength. The note stretched across the stage, clear and soulful, pulling the audience into his world. Gasps rose from the seats, followed by silence, an odd, reverent silence that only the most powerful performances ever created. As he sang, his mother slowly joined in. Her voice was soft, blending seamlessly with his, wrapping around his notes like a warm embrace. The harmony was unlike anything the judges had ever heard before, raw, natural, and deeply emotional. It wasn't about perfection, it was about truth. Every word carried their shared struggles, every note revealed the sacrifices they had made, and every harmony echoed the love that bound them together. Simon Cowell, known for his tough exterior, leaned back in his chair with raised brows. His usual critical expression softened. He whispered something under his breath that the cameras barely caught. "Wow." The boy's confidence grew with every verse, his voice lifting higher, stronger, filled with passion. His mother's harmonies elevated him even more, turning the song into a conversation between two souls who had been through everything together. The audience, caught in the beauty of the moment, was silent except for the occasional sniffle as tears streamed down faces in the crowd. By the time they reached the chorus, the energy in the room had shifted entirely. The boy wasn't just singing, he was telling his story. The mother wasn't just harmonizing, she was protecting, guiding, and lifting him, even on stage. Together, their voices painted a picture of love, resilience, and unbreakable family bonds. When the final note of the verse faded, the arena erupted into applause before the song even finished. Strangers stood to their feet, clapping and cheering, overwhelmed by what they had just witnessed. And in that instant, it was clear, this wasn't just a performance. It was a moment that would stay with everyone forever. As the mother and son's voices filled the theater, the camera zoomed in on Simon Cowell. Known for his sharp critiques and often unimpressed demeanor, Simon had started the performance with his chin resting on his hand, almost indifferent. But now, something had changed. His eyes were locked on the boy, his expression softening with every note. The boy sang with newfound confidence, and his mother's harmonies elevated the performance to an emotional masterpiece. Their voices carried across the arena with a raw honesty that stripped away every layer of doubt. The audience could feel it, so could the judges, but everyone was waiting to see how Simon, the hardest to impress, would react. For a moment, Simon leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk, his mouth slightly open as if words were caught in his throat. He shook his head gently, almost in disbelief. The camera caught him whispering, "This is unreal." Sofia Vergara placed a hand over her heart, visibly moved. Heidi Klum dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, but Simon stayed still, his focus unbroken. His usual tough armor seemed to crack as he watched the bond between the mother and son unfold in front of him. The boy's voice rose higher, trembling but powerful, carrying a weight far beyond his years. Simon blinked, his eyes glistening just enough to reveal the impact. He wasn't just watching a performance, he was witnessing love poured into music. At one point, the mother looked at her son with such tenderness that Simon tilted his head slightly, as though that small exchange between them struck him deeper than the notes themselves. He leaned back, rubbed his chin, and let out a quiet laugh of disbelief. It wasn't mocking, it was the kind of laugh a person gives when something touches them unexpectedly. When the final harmony echoed through the stage, the audience erupted again. Simon didn't clap right away. He sat for a beat longer, absorbing what he had just seen. Then, slowly, he pushed his chair back, stood up, and began clapping with the rest of the judges. The audience roared louder, knowing that if Simon Cowell was standing, it meant something extraordinary had just happened. With a faint smile breaking through his usually stern face, Simon leaned into the microphone and said in a voice filled with awe, "That was absolutely beautiful. I don't say this often, but you two just gave us something unforgettable." The crowd cheered wildly, but all the mother and son could see was Simon, finally moved, finally believing in them. The last note faded into silence, echoing like a prayer. Across the AGT arena. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop, no clapping, no cheering, just the lingering vibration of mother and son's voices hanging in the air. The boy, still clutching the microphone, looked at his mother with wide, uncertain eyes, as if asking, "Did we do enough?" Then it happened. The audience exploded to its feet with thunderous applause. Cheers, whistles, and shouts of joy filled the theater. Strangers wiped their tears and hugged one another. It wasn't just a performance they had witnessed, it was a story of resilience, love, and sacrifice told through music. The boy covered his face with his small hands, overwhelmed by the noise and energy of the crowd. His mother knelt beside him, pulling him into her arms. She whispered into his ear, "You did it, Anik. You did it." Her voice shook with pride. At the judges' table, Heidi was already in tears, clapping with both hands high above her head. Sofia had her mouth open in disbelief, shaking her head as if words could never capture the beauty of what she had just seen. Howie was smiling from ear to ear, mouthing the word, "Wow." But then, all eyes turned to Simon Cowell. Simon sat quietly for a moment, his hand hovering over the panel in front of him. His face was unreadable. The audience grew louder, urging him on, shouting, "Golden buzzer! Golden buzzer!" The boy's mother looked toward Simon, her tears streaming freely now, her heart pounding in her chest. And then, Simon slammed his hand down. The golden buzzer lit up with a flash of brilliance, and instantly, golden confetti burst from above, raining down across the stage in a dazzling shower. The theater erupted in pure chaos, cheers, screams, applause so loud it shook the walls. The boy froze in disbelief, staring upward as the shimmering gold surrounded him. His mother collapsed to her knees, covering her mouth with both hands. She couldn't hold back anymore. Tears streamed down her face as her son threw his arms around her. Together, they embraced, golden light and glitter falling all around them like a blessing from heaven itself. Simon stood, clapping with a genuine smile, rare, warm, and proud. He leaned into the mic and said, "You two just gave us a moment we will never forget." That's what this show is all about. The mother and son held each other tighter, their dream finally real. Their journey of words, love, and music had carried them all the way to a golden buzzer moment that would change their lives forever. The golden confetti still floated through the air, clinging to the stage and sparkling under the lights like tiny stars. The boy and his mother remained locked in each other's arms, their tears mixing with laughter as the audience roared around them. This wasn't just applause, it was love, respect, and admiration pouring out from thousands of strangers who had just witnessed something unforgettable. As the confetti settled, Simon Cowell leaned forward again, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "What you just did wasn't about hitting the right notes," he said, his words cutting through the cheers. "It was about telling a story, your story. And tonight, you reminded every single person here what family, sacrifice, and love really mean." The mother wiped her eyes and placed her hands on her son's shoulders, grounding him in the moment. He looked up at her, his expression a mix of disbelief and pure joy. For years, he had dreamed of singing on a stage this big. For years, she had sacrificed everything, working long hours, carrying heavy burdens, just so he could chase that dream. And now, together, they were standing in golden rain, their dream finally real. Heidi leaned over her mic, smiling through tears. "You touched my heart so deeply," she said. "You too, you belong here." Sophia nodded in agreement, adding, "That wasn't just music, that was love." We all felt it. The boy, still clutching pieces of golden confetti in his hands, turned to the judges and whispered, "Thank you, for believing in us." His voice cracked, but the honesty in his words silenced the crowd once more. His mother kissed the top of his head and added, "This moment is more than we ever imagined. We will never forget this." The cameras panned across the arena, strangers wiping away tears, fans holding up signs, children in the audience clapping with wide smiles. It wasn't just a performance anymore, it was a symbol of hope. A reminder that no matter how far you've traveled or how hard the journey has been, love and perseverance can lead you to places you once thought impossible. As the boy and his mother walked off stage, still hand in hand, the confetti crunching softly under their shoes, the crowd's applause followed them like a wave. They hadn't just sung a song. They had written a new chapter in their lives, a chapter that went beyond music. Their journey of words had become a journey of legacy. And it was only the beginning.